Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome, dear viewers and listeners at Kardec Radio. Here we are in another episode, let's say this way, of our health and spirituality program at Kardec Radio. For 14 years, we've been here with you, bringing the greatest minds of this world that have been defining a new way of thinking, generating new ways of feeling, generating even better ways of making our lives better on earth. There are wonderful people in this world, and amongst them, I have to tell you, one of our best friends at Kardec Radio, Dr. Stephen Post. And today we're so honored that he's back here at Kardec Radio to talk to you and I about a new book. Great minds have to share in so many forms, but books are still the very way. The book is Pure Unlimited Love, Science and the Seven Paths to Inner Peace. Dr. Stephen Post has written this book, and let me say this way. He is the director of the Center of Medical Humanities, Compassionate Care, and Bioethics at the Renaissance School of Medicine at Stony Brook University. He co-founded the Institute for Research on Unlimited Love. He is the author of several books, including Why Good Things Happen to Good People, and he has authored over 400 articles in peer-reviewed journals and has been interviewed by leading newspapers around the world. He is an elected member of the New York Academy of Medicine and the Royal Society of Medicine, as well as founding fellow of the International Society for Science and Religion. He lives in Long Island, New York, and he is a good friend of ours here at Kardec Radio. Yes, he admires Kardec's works, and we admire his works. In this book, Pure Unlimited Love, what is he telling us? Much of what you've been waiting for. Good news. Nowadays, we need good news. And he invites in this book, Pure Unlimited Love. Feel the title, Pure Unlimited Love. Invites you to incorporate these mantras into your everyday life. You and I need good news. And if you think science doesn't have good news, I tell you, science always has good news. And scientists are, we say in Spiritism that scientists, they are like ministers of God in the temples of university. They are discovering, quote unquote, the mysteries of life, and they share the findings with much hard work, with much focus, and our lives, little by little, are becoming better and better. So I'm going to introduce to you, and you're invited to join us to ask your questions. We're going to restream this Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, okay? For those who need it another time. But for now, you can write to us directly here in the chats of our YouTube channel. We have several channels here. We have the British Union of Spiritist Societies with us, the Spiritist Society of Virginia, the British Medical Spiritist Society here with us. We have also the Spiritist Society of Washington, D.C., Kardec Radio. We have its Instagrams, etc. So all of us together viewing this and talking about it. So let's welcome Dr. Stephen Post. Thank you, Dr. Post, for coming to Kardec Radio again. How have you been?
I've been fine, Vanessa. It's been a little while since we chatted, but as you know, there's always a warm spot in my heart for the message of Kardec and for the Spiritist movement. And so it's a beautiful thing to come back and and just realize how, despite all the ups and downs of history, your movement has sustained love in the universe.
Oh, yes. And we are happy that you're always supporting us and sharing your findings. When you wrote about this new book, I have to share, I was so happily surprised about the title because, as a psychologist, especially nowadays, Dr. Post, we're seeing so much fear, not only in the US, but in the world, so much stress, people feeling uncertainties in life. And there you come with this amazing book with an amazing title that is truly unbelievable. How did that begin? I know you've been working for decades in this beautiful work of the institute, but still, how did the first spark of this book came to you?
Well, I was blessed because I knew a wonderful gentleman named John Templeton. Sir John Templeton was an investor, and we became fast friends in about 1990. And he really loved the expression pure, unlimited love. So, in many ways, this book is a tribute to him.
Mhm.
He died in 2008. Uh, but just before he died, his son Jack, who was a surgeon at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, gave me a call on my flip phone, and he said, "Dad is dying." His father was down in Nassau, and he has a final book he wants to write, but he doesn't think he has time to write it, and he didn't. And he's asking if you would write it for him, which is pretty daunting.
Oh
So,
no.
so he trusts you. He thinks you know his way of thinking. And I asked Jack, well, what would the title be? And Jack said, "Is ultimate reality pure unlimited love?" So I did write that for Sir John, and this, in a lot of ways, continues my loyalty to that relationship and to his ideas. So it's a beautiful thing for me to be able to offer this, even as I get a little bit older now.
Yes. And I know the core idea. Let me read it to the people who are with us. Pure and limited love, science, and the seven paths to inner peace.
Mhm.
The core idea, and there is a quote here: when the well being of another is as real to us as our own, we enter the field of love.
Yes,
And there is this definition about pure and limited love as the divine energy that heals, dignifies, and unites all beings. Um, I mean, I know the Institute is very unconventional and it researches beyond some of the paradigms
hmm
in traditional science, right?
yes.
And I would like you to share with us how, you know, the current state of sciences validate this core idea of the book.
Well, in lots of different ways, pure unlimited love isn't just a concept or a definition, it's a reality. It's an ultimate reality in the universe. So one of my friends here, I quote in the introduction, Jeff Trilling, who for many years was the head of family medicine here. I said, "Jeff, what is pure unlimited love to you?" And he said, "It's the first thing you see when you close your eyes for the last time, hopefully." And that tells you something. In other words, it's not just unconditional love. That's why we don't use that language. We want something that's much more universal, much more cosmic, much more about the ultimate nature of the energy in the universe. And pure unlimited love seems to fill that bill. So many physicists now have come around and mathematicians, and they've come to agree that unlimited love underlies the universe, the constants, the mathematical dimensions, all the tremendous thermodynamics. There has to be some sort of mind of unlimited love behind it all. And that's very well accepted by over half of modern physicists, which is nice. But we've also done a lot of studies on the seven paths and
Mm.
different expressions of love. And that's a whole nother piece of it, which is really the core.
So in the introduction, you mentioned, let me just open here. You mentioned that about a national survey
Mhm.
conducted by Lee and Paloma and you,
Mhm.
that about 80% claim to have experienced such divine love directly
Yes,
or otherwise through others at least once, and about 40% claim to have experienced it more than once.
right.
Have you experienced it yourself as well?
Oh, yeah. And by the way, about 20% of those people feel that they experience it all the time. They
Yes,
just go through day to day life feeling this incredibly warm, effervescent love for everybody. And it's nice to know that there are people like that. Uh, so, sure, I've experienced that in my life. And I talk a little bit about that in the book, but I try to keep it
yeah,
away from my own narrative.
of course.
But sure I have. I've been very fortunate. Uh, I had some experiences when I was a teenager that revealed to me the absolute reality of uh, one mind and one heart in the universe, and that when we connect with those dynamics, we feel inner peace. That's the true inner peace. And when we feel inner peace, we can have healing, true healing in our lives, emotionally, but also physically too. So I believe that with all my heart, and that's how I've lived my life with a smile, by the way, and with mirth.
Yes. And in this book, there is much shared about research in neuroscience, psychology, talking about the biology of love, for example, right?
Yes.
And you want to talk about like how altruism can change our neurochemistry, for example?
Yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, I actually, altruism is such a broad term. I speak a lot about kind giving in this book because it associates the action of giving with an emotional state of kindness, and that's when you really see the benefits to the giver. And there are all kinds of studies that I cite in the first chapter, which is may you give and glow. Okay, may you
Yeah.
give and glow, uh, because that's so well established. We did a study of widowers and widowers who had been happily married for many years and were going through grief and bereavement. That's something that I'm sure you help people with, Vanessa, in your
Yeah.
practice. And we found out that the ones who could self report that they were helping others in their neighborhood, not just through formal volunteering, but just, the neighbors, the people in their local faith communities, in the schools, whatever it might be, the hospitals, they were getting through this process more quickly and in a more enduring fashion. So we published this in a good journal, and the New York Society of Widows and Widowers saw
Uh,
this, and they called me. Sitting right here in this audience, I got a phone call, and never heard of that organization, but it's a pretty big organization. And they were having a national meeting in Manhattan. So they asked me if I'd come in and give a speech, which I did. And I talked about all the inner benefits of being a kind giver. The Bible says God loves a cheerful giver. And it doesn't work if you're being forced to be generous, if you're doing this for tit for tat kinds of reasons.
yeah.
But just put all that on the shelf and get rid of this whole attitude that has become so dominant, I think, in some parts of our society. Uh, um, of just transactional life. It's not transactional. There are internal benefits and liberating benefits of just engaging yourself in meaningful helping activities with kindness. It's not how much you do, but if you do it with kindness, just on average, a couple of hours a week is fine. It's a little more for older adults than it is for teenagers, but it's very interesting to see that. And so we did this study, and then I went into New York and I gave this talk. There were a lot of people there, and in the end, there was a guy in the very back of the room, and he was frantically waving his hands. And I called on him, and he said, "I don't care what you say, buddy. I don't do nothing for nothing." And that's not something that I would expect to hear from a spiritist
Yeah.
because you move in different realms.
Uh-huh.
But that's so important, and it was lovely. And so I told him, I said, "Look, I think you got to move beyond that transactional mentality. It's okay for some aspects of life. If you're a hot dog vendor, you're collecting money for hot dogs. But when you're in life generally and you want a meaningful life, just be free in your giving."
Yes. So let's talk about these paths. So it's about how to find this inner peace, this joy of living,
Mhm.
and there are 7 paths,
Right.
right? And these 7 paths, as you said, like give and glow,
Give and glow. That's
kind.
right. Give and glow is beautiful. And the studies that we've done, national studies, show that people who give and glow feel a higher sense of purpose in life. They feel physically healthier. 80% feel that it improves their emotional health. 80% say they recover from loss and disappointment. It's an amazing benefit. 96% of people feel happier. So if you want to have a prosperous, thoughtful, elevated, cheerful life, become a giver, but a giver from the heart.
Yes.
A giver from the heart. And so that's why I don't just talk about altruism, because altruism can be, the people who rushed into 9/11 to save folks, they were wonderful. But a lot of them were, they were firemen and policemen, and I honor them. But they
Mhm.
were doing this because it was part of their job, it was in their role. So not the key thing to successful giving is to put the right emotion into it. And
Mhm.
then the second path, may you heal with kindness.
Mhm.
And working around, it's not just for people working around hospitals. I do work around hospitals and have for many, many years. But for every kid on the corner, everybody, without exception, you can be a healer. All you have to do is have kindness. And when you interact with people, instead of getting caught up in the nastiness of our culture, the
Yeah.
negativity, the hostility, the vitriol, even the killing that's going on,
Yeah.
just put that on the shelf. Don't have anything to do with it. Be strong in your kindness. And kindness is a beautiful expression of love. So that's what we do. We try to teach medical students compassion, empathy, and we do very well. We've won national awards here for that kind of work, and we need it in healthcare, as you well know. There's not enough of it, and when people are kind as healthcare providers, and they stay in touch with that kindness, they don't have burnout, they don't get lost, they don't feel depressed about their work. They feel called in a vocation to do this, and it just goes on and on and on.
Yes. So heal with kindness. And this is the second. The third is follow your callings.
Follow your callings. That is so important. I wrote that for young people. I think about my own now young adult kids. If you feel that you have some natural gifts and talents that you can use to contribute to the lives of others, you're home free. Just make the most of it in your life. You stick with it. Don't get diverted by a little more prestige or a little higher paycheck. If you can help it, just go straight with your callings. And in the end, you'll have everything that you could possibly need. You will be blessed. Having a calling in life is really being able to give and glow forever. It's a way of giving and glowing day to day. And I've been fortunate. I've been really blessed in life because I knew when I was 15 I was going to be a teacher, and I've been able to do that over the years in various very very nice medical schools. I've been around a lot of people, and I take great pride in the students I've helped see this truth that they need to be who they are and follow their hearts and souls, because nobody on this earth should ever be told that they don't have a calling.
Mm-hmm.
It's humiliating. It steals away their dignity. Everybody has a calling. It can be simple, and it can be um, relatively insignificant in the great eyes of the world. It doesn't matter. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
just follow your calling.
Yeah, it's not easy. Like when kids go to school, they do these tests. And I remember my daughter Virginia coming home one day last year and saying, Mom, these tests cannot portray who I am.
Right.
You cannot tell. That's not what I will be. And I said, Don't worry about it. I'm a psychologist. I tell you, they're instruments and instruments. They're using one of them. It's valid, but not necessarily for everybody. So you shouldn't fit yourself in a box.
School systems sometimes teach people how to fit in with
Yes.
certain kinds of occupations. But what we need to do more of is help people discover their callings. And if we can do that, we will have a much more prosperous world, and people's lives will be that much happier. Thomas Edison was
Hmm.
thrown out of school when he was 12 years old. His teachers in Milan, Ohio, said that he couldn't focus his mind. And that's probably true. And his mother loved him enough to say, Look, Tom, you can stay here home on the farm. We lived on a little farm in Ohio. And all you need to do is go into the barn and tinker. Just try to invent things. And she said to him, quote, Thomas, you can be a light to the world. And he was. He was. People don't realize that. And actually, she was quoting the New Testament when she said that.
Oh, wow.
So, she understood that his calling was very profound and it was his destiny. And it did not matter if the teachers didn't see it in him or actually even humiliated him and threw him out of school. He was remarkably unhappy about that, but he got over it and he had a very wonderful life.
Exactly. Wow. So that's why you say it's a path.
It's a path.
So I know we're talking about the third one of them. There are four more before I ask the next question. Now, this one is I have to confess, my preferred one. Raise kind kids.
Yes. May you raise kind kids, kind children. That's so important. I have a couple of kids. They're not kids anymore, but the thing I'm most grateful for is that I believe they're both very kind.
Oh,
Uh, and they've had pretty good uh, careers in a sense, but I never put career ahead of kindness
mm,
and love. And I think what happens from the studies that we've supported actually is that parents tend to emphasize kindness until their children turn, into the young teens, and
mm,
now they're competing for the better universities, and the kindness sort of recedes, and that's too bad because in the end, you're going to be more successful with kindness than without it, obviously. And so and then we funded $4 million worth of research on how do you raise kind children, and that's all in the book. And there are lots of interesting techniques, everyday techniques for parents to focus on. Like just have a little family list of agreed upon values, just 4 or 5 points: kindness, forgiveness, gratitude, whatever. And when there's a difficult moment in the family, when something seems to be quite off target, don't lose it. Don't go screaming. Just gather together uh, and talk about the values that everyone's agreed to on that list. You need that center of culture in the home because the world around us is anything but what we need. It's just pulling us away from our centered kindness and love, which is our soul. It's pulling us away from who we truly are in our hearts. So we need to have reminders of that. And the studies show that families that have those kinds of devices in their homes, instead of going ballistic when a child makes some error, they actually come together and they have these thoughtful conversations about these core values that define their family.
Mm-hmm.
That helps a lot. Also, volunteering intergenerationally is important, and when the parents have their kids involved in volunteering, including volunteering outside of your sort of in group, if you will, actually socially, but just sort of doing something that might be a little unexpected, stretching your children out so they're not just myopic
Yes.
interests, but they have a sense of a shared humanity. That is incredibly valuable. So I think, we've forgotten. I mean, it's one thing to bring kids into the world. you, you know, I mean, I don't want to diminish the challenges of childbirth. Don't get me wrong. Okay.
Oh, I know.
But
It's hard.
the challenge though is raising a kind child, and sometimes they get so sucked into the technologies. So I hired a woman here at Stony Brook who became she's a physician, Stanford graduate. She became our physician documentary filmmaker. And
Oh,
she did
wow.
a movie called Screenagers. You may have heard of it. Screenagers, Delaney Rustin. It went all around the country, became the most popular documentary of the year. And it was really basically an honest assessment of how parents can struggle, but how they can succeed in getting their children into real, meaningful, loving relationships that are not completely subjected to the technological imperative.
Yeah. Would you say that of the seven paths, this one, raising kind kids, is the most urgent one in
I
the
think
world?
I think it's right up there. I think it's right up there. It's hard, incredibly urgent, and I'll tell you, as a parent, um, if your kids are not kind, if they're getting into all sorts of bad trouble, if they're in bad relationships, if they're doing hurtful things, it's very painful as a parent. And you do begin to blame yourself. Hurt people, and sometimes it's because we just completely got out of control with our anger and rage, uh, with a 2-year old. And so when I begin that chapter on "May you heal with kindness" with a few lines that I think are beautiful, and just listen. It's just 7 lines. As we come into this world with our first breath, we are completely open. There is no judgment, no preformed sense of self or other. We are in that moment pure love. Before words, before rational thought, our visceral experience penetrates deeply. We sense the complete love of a parent holding us just after birth as it flows into every fiber of our being. And if there is fear, worry, or rejection, this too is felt in full measure. And we funded studies at Yale about how even toddlers, 1 year old or 18 months old, are perfectly capable of empathic emotions. So this myth that the child doesn't have empathy is really bad science,
Mm-hmm.
very bad science. I was at a meeting 3 weeks ago in New York for the Templeton Prize, and Jane Goodall was there, the great primatologist.
Oh my.
In fact, we had dinner together, and the next morning, she flew to LA to give a talk, and she passed away. She was 91. She seemed so perfectly healthy. She had a calling. She wanted to reverse the negative, unscientific myth that non-human primates were all nasty swashbucklers. And so she went into the wilds and with very careful observation, She noticed that these non-human primates are perfectly capable of kindness and generosity and looking after the most vulnerable in their groups. And so, hey, she changed the world because by changing how people thought about primates, she was
Yes.
changing how we think about ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think she was beautiful. I love Jane Goodall. And I'm very sorry she passed away, but she did so much good in her life for so many people.
What a legacy. And talking about love and the healing power of it, you wrote that love heals individuals and communities. So, how does research actually show this healing power?
Oh, love heals. Love heals. If you look at, I mean, there's so many studies. I've been publishing these for 30 years, in the best scientific medical journals around. But if you look at every area of health, uh, kindness heals. In addiction disorders, there's the AA movement, the 12-step movement, and the 12-step is the golden rule. Uh, you know, uh, May you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And by getting into that mindset and living that life, you not only help them, but you also tap into your own strengths and your own great uh, veracity and the truth of it all. So that's for sure. But there in literally every area, um, uh, love heals. If you have that parent who can, surround you with that sort of quiet, beautiful love as a child, you are predictably, and you know this as a psychologist, you're predictably going to have a better life, and your peers in your adolescent years will identify you as kind. So it's a kind of a transmission. You sort of pass the torch. Doesn't mean that if you have some disadvantages, adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, they call them, early in life, that you're cooked. It doesn't mean that. You can
Mm-mm.
have the right community, like the Spiritists, where there are a lot of wonderful, loving people, and that can make up for some of these deficits. You can marry the right person who's compassionate, and that can help a lot. And you can find your callings and find meaning in those callings and help people. So you can benefit tremendously, but you still start out with a certain disadvantage if your early childhood is disruptive. I've studied a lot about Adolf Hitler, and his father was so brutal. He was brutal to him, in a small town in Austria. He loved his mother very much, but she died when he was fairly young. So he just had this very, very brutal father. And you wonder how a person like him could do the terrible things he did.
Mm,
Well, there's always, hurt people.
exactly.
And that's what we need to understand.
I agree. And this goes back as you talk about again, I'm going to go back to the other paths to inner peace. Know the one mind.
Yes.
It's like the source of this love.
Well, that's Kardec. I mean, I'm a Kardec fan. I actually read his stuff. I have some of your books, your paperback books of his collected writings, and I take him seriously because I also, I believe that, as he did, that there is one mind. Believe it or not, there was only one mind. I don't think he thought that our individual minds were derived from brain and tissue and cells. I think he
No.
felt that our brains were the conduits
Yes.
for mind, and we all participate. We all are centers of the divine mind. But ultimately, as I think Einstein wanted to say, and as many others have said, Schrodinger, the great physicist, there is only one mind. That's what Hinduism always argued, and Buddhism. And I believe that if you look at Christianity rightly, it also has that. So he believed that there is one mind. And that's why we can be inspired. We can feel invaded by a kind of love and creativity. I give some nice examples of that. Even Ramanujan, the great mathematician from southern India, He never studied mathematics, but this was about 1900. He would be praying and at the foot of his goddess, he would receive these inspirations. And then he would write them down in the dirt with his finger. And he'd come back later in the day and he would put them in his notebook. Famous Notebooks of Ramanujan. And there's a whole movie about this called The Man Who Knew Infinity. And he was invited to Cambridge University. He lasted a few years there. And then he went back to India, and he had a hard time in life because he didn't have any money to speak of. But, you know, in the middle of Cambridge University, at the most distinguished college, Trinity College, where Stephen Hawking and all these great people went to school, there in the middle of that library are the two notebooks of Ramanujan in a beautiful black glass case. And it is said that those formulas that he felt he received, they're the basis of a lot of quantum physics. And not all of it, but most of it. So somehow or another, his creativity wasn't, he didn't feel it was his creativity. He felt it was the creativity of this great intelligence, this great mind. But it wasn't just a great mind, it was a great heart. He also believed, and I believe, in a universal heart, that there's a heart underlying the universe, and it's a heart of pure love. And if we just concentrate on that, if we're mindful and meditational and prayerful about it, we can in fact engage with that heart. We can become one with that heart. And if we can do that with mind and heart, we can have true inner peace. So yeah, that's how I define inner peace. And absolutely, and then we can have inner healing too.
It would be great now that our president is talking so much about peace and the summit of peace that you come and share this view, because you say here, the fifth path, it's page 147, the importance of inner integrity. Inner peace is in significant part the fruit of moral integrity,
Yes.
being true to conscience and fully integrated with it. And then later in the next subtopic about the eve of destruction, you say the world is replete with people who, disconnected from one mind, seek annihilation of self and others or both. So, bottom line, you're telling us that the lack of this inner peace generates the lack of the collective peace because we are disconnected with this one mind.
Very much so. And so I'm a real believer in the many great mystical figures like Kardec, who has said that, there is this profound love. It's not the love of chocolate, it's not the love of designer jeans or whatever. It's this profound other regarding love when the security and well being of another is as real to you as your own, and sometimes more so. You love that person. But then, we struggle with love because we're unwise as parents. We can be myopic and centered on our own in group and not care much about the neediest. We can be erratic in our emotional state. So it's a spiritual energy in the universe, and we can connect with that. That's what spirituality is really about and what it's for. And so yeah, many people talk about these moments when they were literally invaded by what they felt was not their own love, but a love that came through them from beyond. And that is ultimately what pure unlimited love is about.
Yeah. And it's interesting you're talking about love. I particularly love the United States of America so much that we actually started Cardiac Radio on July 4th
Oh, right.
of noon. And there is this beautiful foundation. I know it's
Mhm.
for some people paradoxical, but you say here that we are in America currently spiritually empty. Like there's some form of empty spirituality
Yeah.
happening. Can you tell us more about this?
Well, I'm not so. There is an overwhelming anxiety and adversarial quality in our lives because we don't quite understand that we can have difference of opinion and still love each other.
Yes.
I grew up with an Irish Democrat mother, Molly McGee, and a very Republican dad, Henry Post. And they would argue sometimes at the dinner table, should it be Nixon or Kennedy, 1960? They never uh, ever thought about separating. And nowadays, people actually break up their marriages over politics. It's not worth it. Politics, I just want to say, is not the ultimate reality. I don't diminish its importance, and I think that we can be politically involved in various ways, but not at the cost of our souls. Not if we're just so hung up in vengeance and literally enough hatred to go shooting people for no good reason at all. So
Mhm.
it's just unacceptable, and the violence that this breeds is pathetic. So I think we can overcome it. I'm actually very optimistic about America. I love America too, as do you.
Mhm.
Um, it's got its limitations, its flaws here and there, but overall, it's the greatest experiment in love and freedom and justice that we've ever had on the face of the earth, and we have an investment in helping it to succeed. So that's really my feel. That's why the seventh path, may you honor the spirit of freedom.
Oh my. Yeah.
And I don't think free. So just and Kardec agrees with this actually.
Yes.
He doesn't think that freedom is just a materialistic quality, like
Mhm.
a dog might chew through a leash to get free. Actually, it won't always do that because if you give it a nice plate of food, it
Yeah.
will prefer the food to freedom.
Yeah.
That's been well demonstrated in psychology. They call that learned helplessness. But
Yes.
I feel as though freedom is a gift in the Hindu tradition, which Kardec was familiar with.
Yeah.
The nature of the supreme being was basically threefold: love, creativity, and freedom. And you and I and everybody listening to this, we exist to manifest in our own lives love, creativity, and freedom. And that freedom is a gift because we're participating in this spiritual mind that you spiritists understand better than almost anybody else.
Mm.
We are centers in this one great mind, and the quality of that mind includes freedom. So we seek freedom uh, because of our spiritual nature. Not be actually most of the, as you well know, most of the neuropsychiatrists and neuropsychologists and neurologists generally don't think there's any freedom in the universe. They think it's all determinism. So that you almost, this is Sir John Eccles, who was a Nobel Prize laureate for his work on figuring out the communication between brain cells. He was my teacher for a while at the University of Chicago. He said you can't get mind out of matter any more than you get blood out of a stone. So freedom isn't coming from matter. He would argue it's coming from mind. It's just, and that's my perspective in the chapter. So it
Mhm.
connects with the idea of may you know the one mind. But freedom is immediately in every great tradition connected with the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Not the minimal view. I mean, do not do unto. That's important. You don't want to go home tonight and feel good about your life because you didn't kick anybody in the shin, but actually to do unto others, to use your moral imaginations, your spirituality, and to be asking yourself, how can I contribute and benefit the people around me? That's the real golden rule. And that's what freedom is. Freedom is living in that rule.
And you're talking about freedom. Freedom is divine. It's in the law of nature.
Yes.
Talking about nature, the other path. You mentioned it briefly. It's so important to go back. You mentioned about Jane Goodall, cherish the gift of nature. It's this
Amazing.
reverence for earth to renew balance. And you give a couple examples here in the book about ecotherapy, forest bathing, and how this unity with nature will restore us,
Yes,
will give us a sense of balance, which is foundational for peace, right?
yes. Yeah, so now people are beginning to talk about nature deficit disorder. Now, I actually show up sometimes at the psychiatric emergency room on the weekends just to kind of get a sense of where people are at. And I run into so many individuals, not just young people, but just individuals generally, and they've never really realized how important it is spiritually to connect with nature. And if you go to meditate in your village wherever you live, you'll typically find that there's a wind chime and the sounds are beautiful. You might see a statue of St. Francis of Assisi. You might see or might hear water coming down a little incline into a pond. So there's something about nature and spiritual practice, meditation and prayer, that is very, very central. And I'm horrified that we've gotten so far away from loving nature, the love of nature. I actually, I say, the pure unlimited love. Well, we should be loving the eternal, divine, supreme being. We should be loving one another. We should be also be loving ourselves properly, and we
Mhm.
should be loving nature. So those are the four loves in this book, and every one of them is important. They're very interrelated. So I live on Long Island. I take a ferry from a little town called Port Jefferson across Long Island Sound at least once a month, just because it's an hour and a half ride one way on a ferry over the water and the waves and the seagulls are out there. And then I come right back. I don't even get off. I get a round trip ticket for $26 and it brings me back. And I just love doing that because it's so liberating. And you can breathe deeply, you can practice mindfulness, you can utilize nature to strengthen your spiritual centeredness. And I think that's very, very important.
And Dr. Post, I understand that you talked about having hope for humanity's capacity to live this pure, unlimited love. But for regions in this world where we're living critical, like wars,
Mhm.
and people are trying to rebuild their lives out of, ruins. And so, how do you see hope in those extreme cases?
Well, I'm not naive about human nature. Human nature, disconnected from the divine, is capable of all kinds of mischief. So I think that inner peace has to begin when we feel within ourselves that connection with one mind, with one heart. And you have to look inside, look in the mirror, because there isn't any real good, solid external peace until we calm down ourselves inwardly and become the sorts of people from whom peace in the world naturally emanates. Now, I realize that there are real adversarial forces, including in group, out group conflict. A lot of Darwin, later on in his life, Darwin got away from the selection of the fittest, of the individual. He went toward group selection theory. And he said that all this kindness and natural empathy and love and care that we see in human nature, a lot of it comes because group one is more successful than group two. Part of that success is having those healing qualities in your community. But the flip side of it is that we also have these in group, out group conflicts, and we don't have full inclusion. We don't have a common humanity. So he thought that the goal of spirituality and of philosophy, he quoted Immanuel Kant, was to realize that those differences between them and us that we think are so pivotal are actually not important at all. They don't amount to anything if you analyze them logically. And I think that the part of the problem of our times is that we've gotten so caught up in these ancient hysterical uh, 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 animosities uh,
Hmm.
that we have to somehow focus our minds. I do this. This is where daily spiritual practice comes in for me.
Exactly.
I mean, as you see in the introduction, I get up in the morning, and I have since I was 15. I get up about 5, and I do mindfulness meditation. I have a real routine that I go through, and then I ask myself, because I know who I'm going to see over the course of the day. I work in these fairly stable environments, and people work under me, and I have leadership roles. So I know if people have certain needs. If somebody's youngster is suffering with an addiction, I know when I see that person in the morning, I probably want to be compassionate and listen attentively as he expresses that experience and the frustrations involved. And then there might be somebody who I know is getting a little off track. I know they're great people, they have great virtues, but somehow they're losing that inner direction. So I had to exercise carefrontation. That's another expression which I borrowed with permission from M. Scott Peck when he was still alive. He wrote The Road Less Traveled, and he wrote me. I have a letter from him up here on my shelf. He said, "Stephen, you write a lot about love, but there is such a thing as a love that has to really confront people." And we determined that we didn't like the word confrontation.
Yeah.
We like carefrontation.
Yes.
It works a lot better. Um, so they're all mirth. I love mirth. I think one of the problems in our culture today, Vanessa,
Uh-huh.
is that we don't laugh enough. I
I
mean,
agree.
no culture on in the history of the world has succeeded if people forget how to have a little laughter and a little lightheartedness.
I have a story for you on that.
I hear that.
When I moved from Brazil to the US 27 years ago, the chairman of my department, Michael Shipley at the University of Maryland, bright mind, he came to me a month after I moved in and he asked me, he was in Brazil. That's how I met him. He was at our university there, University of São Paulo. So he came to me and asked, Vanessa, are you happy here? I said, yeah. Do you miss Brazil? Of course. And he says, what do you miss the most? And I
Uh,
had to share. I said, I miss the laughter. I
yeah.
miss the joy of living because in Brazil, we're not shy. And then he looked at me and said, Vanessa, remember, here we're very serious. And then I started laughing. I said, you have to, you
You
know.
have to laugh. So as well as I do, the studies on laughter. Norman Cousins, The Anatomy of an Illness. He laughed himself through a very serious case of autoimmune disease, and he wrote a best-selling book. Again, The Anatomy of Illness began as an article in the New England Journal of Medicine, and now at UCLA Medical Center, there is the Norman Cousins Center for Psychoneuroimmunology about how laughter frees us from that heaviness, that dense negative emotion that floods us with stress hormones, and that slows wound healing. It affects metabolism. It's bad for the heart and vasculature, and it even affects the hippocampus, a part of the brain
Yeah,
that's identifiable as involved in the onset of Alzheimer's disease.
exactly.
So laughter is so important in a millisecond. So I'm ridiculous. I mean, I was teaching a small group of students this morning, medical students, and I for the first thing I asked, I said, so are you laughing much? And they were all there. They're all so heavily burdened in a lot of ways by their clerkship experience. And I gave them I said, Halloween's coming. And this is a joke for your audience. Always clean, uplifting, and respectful, but never the dark stuff, but always uplifting. And so I said, where do ghosts, because Halloween's coming,
Yeah.
where do ghosts buy houses?
Uh,
Do you know? You don't know.
no.
On dead end streets. That's my joke for all you spiritists out there. Remember that I said that. Dr. Post told you where ghosts buy houses. And the other thing I was saying about a week ago, what do you do if you have dyslexia,
Uh,
insomnia, and you're an agnostic? Now, spiritists are not agnostics. You believe in some higher being.
yeah.
But what do you do with it? Well, okay, the answer is you're up all night wondering about the existence of dog. So, never anything that's derisive or unkind or hurtful, but just upbeat humor in small doses. Doesn't have to be long and complicated, but it frees people. And there's so much good literature about the value of laughter. And all the non-human primates that Jane Goodall studied, they laughed like crazy.
Yes.
And you wonder, like, how come people sometimes laugh like crazy? It's because it's who we are. But also, I believe that there's the laughing Buddha. There's laughter in the divine in Hinduism and in Christianity too,
Mm-hmm.
um, and Judaism, and so we need to recognize that laughter is an expression of love.
Yes.
And if you don't have laughter, how can you love if
With
there's no laughter?
yeah.
Just asking. I mean, maybe you can do it, but it would be sort of
Yeah. Something is
harsh.
missing there. The emotional body language has to match the feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've probably noticed this with me. I'm very mirthful.
Yes.
I mean, it's not that I'm unserious. I'm very serious. I have to be because I've
Yeah.
been very productive over the years, and I've had to navigate all kinds of challenges, um, professionally and in other ways. But I'm always mirthful because my mirthfulness is a quality of my spirituality.
But would you say that you writing this book,
Yeah,
it it changed something else personally in you?
I would say it consolidated
Oh.
an awful lot of the things that have been important to me. And it's a serious book, but it's not so serious that I don't have some nice little anecdotes and vignettes and stories and so forth. Uh, but it's ultimately, yeah, it's about the work of the institute. We've studied all these different areas of love, the wheel of love, um, the ways of love, and again, I can't come to work with my role as a leader and just walk around spewing the word love because people get confused by it. They don't know what it is. It's actually a good way to lose your job in
Yes.
today's world. But they know the expressions of love. They
Yeah.
know that how love can be manifested depending on the needs of the people around you. And so, creativity, loyalty, mirth, celebration, listening, respect, forgiveness. The fellow who unfortunately made a medical mistake, and as a student, it resulted in the death of a patient. This wasn't here, it was actually in Cleveland.
Mhm.
And he was ready to quit medical school. He came into my office because I was chairing the committee on students. And I said, "How are you doing? I'd heard about this." And he said, "Well, I'm going to leave. I'm leaving school." And I said, "You cannot do that." And I said, "Let me give you a quote from Martin Luther King, which I picked up from the desk of a neonatologist in Louisville, Kentucky one time. He had it inscribed in teak. Those who make no mistakes make nothing. And that's something for every kid who's listening to your radio program to
Mhm.
remember. Those who make no mistakes make nothing. I've made mistakes, and you've made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. And I don't ever like to give the impression that somehow my life is perfect or has always been perfect. Not at all. But I've done my best. And the key thing in life, maybe a final point, is that you have to expand the canvas. It's like one of those Jackson Pollock paints where he just throws down a lump of really ugly paint and it just looks like hell. But then by the time he covers it up with these beautiful lines of all different colors that just seem perfectly, they seem to be inspired by ultimate reality almost. And it winds up in the most important museums in the world because he was able to expand. And that's what you have to do in life. You have to expand. And that includes all the negative conflicts in the world. You have to expand the canvas. One little story. I got here to Stony Brook. And I'd been doing unlimited love work for a long time and been on a lot of news shows. And amazingly, a young cub reporter from the Three Village Herald, the local paper, I'd never heard of it, had done an interview with the dean of the medical school, a transplant surgeon, and my department chair, and said, "You're hiring this guy to talk about empathy and compassion and teach ways to be that way with your students. But what about this pure unlimited love stuff?" And to their great credit, these individuals, they said, "Well, we're not so sure about that, but we know he'll do a good job." So the next morning, I called the president of the university, Shirley Kenny, and I said, "Shirley, you recruited me for this, and now you've probably seen the Three Village Herald. Has anybody called you up about it?" And she said, "Yeah, I got some calls this morning." And I said, "Who called you?" The only thing on the cover page of the Three Village Herald, I forgot to say this, was "Unlimited love comes to Stony Brook."
Oh,
And I
wow.
thought, holy smokes, how am I going to outlive this? And so I said, "Who called you?" And she said, "Well, a lot of emeritus professors." And then I said, "Well, what did they say?" Well, she said, "They were mostly male professors, and they asked me, what kind of love are we talking about?" And of course, it was mirthful. I mean, we just laughed that one to the end of the day. And and I was coming up. There's an escalator in the middle of our medical school, and I was coming up from the second to the third floor, and there was a guy up on top of the escalator looking down at me, and he had his arms crossed like the old Mr. Clean commercials, kind of burly. And I'd never seen this guy before. I'd never been in the building before, and I looked at him, and I said, and he was staring at me, and I looked at him, and he said, "Are you Dr. Post?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, this is the first thing anybody said to me in this building: "Are you going to save us?" And this guy's a very distinguished microbiologist, world famous. And I said, "Well, I'm not 100% sure of this, but I'm going to do my best." And we just laughed and became great friends. And so
That's
the point is that sometimes, life hits you in the face and you realize this is not an ideal situation, but it's always there for a reason. And
mhm.
you always have adversaries and difficult moments because they're only there to bring out the best in you. And nobody has an enemy. I do not have any enemies in my life. I don't even believe in the idea of love of enemies because it assumes a certain construct. I have adversaries and have had adversaries, but I love them because they bring out my best.
Interesting, because in this book, for those who are watching us, the uniqueness of the book, besides the topic itself, it's the structure, about the practices that you suggest, the meditation that you also share, and at the very end, I have to read this. At the very end, in the concluding thoughts, it's more than profound. It's true. I am free because I love, and I can love because I'm free being. I'm a free being. I
That's
am never free when I am entrapped in destructive emotions like resentment, bitterness, or hatred. I am never free when I do harm to others or even think about such a thing. I am free because early every day I meditate on pure, unlimited love and how it can take form in the encounters that lie before me. In this mindset and heart set,
Mhm.
my soul flies light and I manage the day with grace. The spirit of freedom projects into the world from our hearts and minds in awareness of the Supreme. I have to share this with you because you did some work with the youth, and I was present there.
Mhm.
Cara Correa, too, she was there at the United Nations,
Mhm. Yes, yes.
right? I
I
think it,
remember her very well.
right? She's
She
here
wrote
with
a
us.
great essay. She gave a great talk.
Yeah.
She was wonderful.
So we have lots of works with youth and children. When I got your book, I said, you know what? That's something we need to do, to have a whole day. Because in our center in Virginia, for
Sure.
years we've had our heart day. And I see that your book can be the the theme through which we can create several activities for the children, the teens, and the parents, the families
Mhm.
to really practice this pure, unlimited love, to really connect and expand, as you said,
Yeah.
right?
Happy to hear that. And if you ever need me to pop down there on the train, I'd be happy to do it pro bono.
Oh my, you're
Just
amazing.
pro bono. So just
Yeah.
let me know.
We needed to do an event with you here in Washington D.C. especially,
Yeah.
like we did at the museum in D.C.
Yeah.
And
Well, I still have the Kardec book on my shelf at home, and he reminds me in a lot of ways of Sir John Templeton, who they called Templeton the Tennessee mystic.
oh
He
wow.
was a great investor, but he also was a believer in the metaphysical reality of pure unlimited love.
Yeah, there's much more work to be done. With your book, we need to open more doors, right?
Yeah, I do. So I love the Spiritist movement, and so for that reason, if anybody ever wants me to show up, I will show up. That's a promise.
Deal. That's the next step. Since this book is being released, people can buy it at Amazon and they can go to your website too. You're so easy to find, you're everywhere, and people can get to know of this book and the practicality of the book.
Yeah,
It's not only about the research, the stories, but the tips on how to practice, the
yeah.
meditation, and to really practice this. I love this. Like every morning, you really connect with this pure unlimited love,
Mhm.
and the sense of life changes. Everything
Yeah, yeah.
changes.
The early morning is important because the great Kabbalistic rabbis of Judaism, sent millennia ago, they all said that that's a great time for prayer and meditation because you've just woken up and you're not quite sure where you are. That sometimes happens to me. And also, you're not locked into the chronological pressures of time and the day. So you're sort of beyond time and place. And that's the way the divine is. So if you can meditate and be mindful and feel that infinite mind and that infinite heart early on, that's the ideal time for it. And then you can carry it on through the day. You may have some challenges and get away from it a little bit so you can replenish.
Yeah.
Um, I have this little thing on my desk here. It's called Just a Moment. It
Ah,
takes 1 minute, and as the sand goes down through the hourglass, I reorient myself. And you do have to be vigilant, but don't forget how important the morning is. And then in the evening, as I say in the book, you want to ask yourself, um, how did I do on the wheel of love? Was I compassionate? Did I do some small kind act? Was I forgiving? Was I mirthful? Was I respect? You want to think about the day a little bit in retrospect because that makes a difference.
Dr. Post, you're so much in our hearts. So much wisdom. We're going to sleep better tonight for sure. Wake
Okay.
up better as well. But I have to share. I have an idea, okay? One more thing. I think if we send the copies of the Pure Unlimited Love to the Congress, the shutdown is going to end the minute after.
Well, I hope so.
We can.
I could send some to the White House too.
Yes, why not? You know, our group here in Virginia and DC last year at Christmas on Christmas Day and also New Year's, we did this metro campaign where we distributed books and the Spiritist magazine for free in all the 100 metro stations we have in the Maryland, Virginia, DC area.
Wow. Wow.
So we would gladly do also distribute your book there.
So after we get off this evening,
Yes.
send me an email with your best mailing address because I'm going to mail you
Yeah.
at least 3 boxes with 20 copies in each one. And you can just do whatever you want with it.
There you go. You know,
Bring it
Dr.
to Congress.
Rose,
Bring it to the metro station.
love is magical.
Yeah.
Certainly, we're going to talk more. We're going to make arrangements also for you to come here. We're going to distribute your books, talk about the books. We're going to restream this very conversation here live on
Exactly.
Saturday. So people have more opportunity, especially the people in the other side of the world who are
Yeah.
now probably sleeping, but
Yeah.
they will be able to join us. We want to thank Dr. Post, people who are here, like Daisy Gallen. She's sharing, like, thank you, Dr. Post, for sharing your research and your wisdom with us. What an inspiration. Loved your jokes. Thanks for bringing laughter and hope. Much gratitude. Kara Correa here, also delighted about it. Maria Plummer, thank you, Maria. I met them
Maria.
in Boston, the four sisters. Amazing. She wrote some books for kids. Amazing. She's thanking you for sharing through love. And we have more people in other channels here as well. We don't have more time. Aline is here. I can see the folks and friends. We have so many friends here. They are going to share this interview as well. So more people can get to know of this wonderful news that there is hope and there is a direction. There are paths. All we need to do is wake up early and connect with
Yes.
your unlimited love, right?
Yes, it takes practice and consistency, but over the course of a lifetime, it really becomes second nature. It's like surfing. You have to paddle really hard to catch that wave, but once you catch that wave, all you have to do is balance. You don't even have to exert yourself. You just balance. And I've been on that surfboard for a long, long time.
Oh, wow. Thank you for your leadership and also for your courage to research, to share, and to really lead the world into this new understanding. I hope the whole world gets to know of pure, unlimited love and shares with everyone around. Thank you so much, Dr. Post.
Vanessa, it is an honor and a delight, and I'm giving my best wishes to everybody in your Spiritist community and in your family too, because
Thank
you're all
you.
part of the Spiritist community, of course.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We look forward to continuing being in touch with you and do
Yes.
more works.
Yes.
And we look forward to the next time you'll be here, Cardiac Radio too.
It's
Thanks.
always an honor. Take
Thank
care.
you so much. Thank you, friends. See you next time.